Greetings, viewers. Welcome to this special edition of GeoInterview with Mr. Abhivardhan. Mr. Abhivardhan is the esteemed chairperson and managing trustee of the Indian Society on Artificial Intelligence and Law. His expertise comes from a vantage point as a policy advocate in the legal realm of AI. And from what I know, not many people in India are working on this. And this was the reason that I wanted to talk to you, sir. So I hope you are doing great and thank you for doing this interview.
It's a pleasure, and I wish all the best. I hope this conversation brings some value to people who would like to know more about AI policy and technology policy in India and the Indo Pacific. So, yeah, it's my honor as well.
So to add more about our guest, he is also managing partner at the Indo-Pacific Legal Research, where he serves the role of policy consultant and policy advocate to issues related to Indo-Pacific affairs, as sir told about. He also works on the disruptive technology, ethics and policies, and AI governance. So, sir, before we move to the agenda of this interview, I want to know that since you have been in the realm of AI and legality of it for a long time now, even before ChatGPT and Mid Journey became a thing, a popular thing that people started using. How do you think that the perception of people has changed before the ChatGPT movement that the world had and after the ChatGPT movement that the world is seeing right now?
Uh, Excellent question. Obviously, first of all, thank you for having me. Um, when I started in this, Chat GPT was not a thing. I think it was just a few, I would say, a year ago before even Chat GPT 3, if we call it, or GPT 3, when GPTs became mainstream. I think that was the time when I was into this. Now, interestingly, when we look at aspects of artificial intelligence after the Ukraine war and the launch of GPT 3.5 at the same time, there was a lot of buzz around things, like people were interested about the nature of ChatGPT. Why does it answer questions in such a way? Is it interesting? Is it a long lasting thing which will have its own use case? And these are poignant questions to answer. But the problem is, before even regulating something, are we even sure about the impact? And due to the way the marketing industry has been misusing the advent of any digital tech, the way it has happened with blockchain, the way it has happened with uh, AI, IoT, the problem is that Bitcoin did not survive, and again, it's trying to get back. With AI, the problem is there will be a lot of technology winters which will affect the innovation cycle of this technology because we don't understand the fact that a lot of investors and VCs are fooled by the so called AI revolution, and a lot of genuine AI development which is happening, we don't even know about that properly. So standardization doesn't happen. We don't know whether this AI product or system will survive for 6 to 12 months. And yeah, thanks to the information warfare of the marketing industry of so-called AI influencers and all those people, and that is something which happens sometimes even by hindsight because AI is such a hyped up topic, right? And one side says, okay, there's no hope in AI. It's all done and dusted. We are gonna be affected by the matrix, which is not a reasonable assessment, even in the geopolitical context, right? And like for example, the Americans think that the Chinese have already advanced in AI that much that they have lost the war. I don't think so. The Americans are way ahead in the B2C cycle, in the B2B cycle. The Chinese are a very closed economy. It's a very different approach.
Hmm.
Again, they are dominant, but then the Chinese R&D might be better. But again, it's not a lost case, right? Then again, semiconductors come into play. So that's a different question altogether. But I think it's important to understand that the future of AI driven growth has to be understood differently, and which is why we try to help people in the tech side to ensure that they build better market practices so that at least you know what you're going to regulate, right?
Mhm.
Otherwise, everywhere, including in India, we will be panicking, and then it doesn't serve anyone's interests.
So we'll talk about the commercialization of AI as well as the semiconductor market as a whole. But from what I know from the popular lore, the time that I was growing up, AI was perceived like a Terminator-like entity, clad in a leather jacket, riding that cool chopper that Arnold Schwarzenegger used to drive in the movie Terminator. But as we see AI in action, it seems very alluring. Like maybe not as dangerous as Arnold Schwarzenegger was in Terminator, but maybe not as fit as he is in the real life. So, coming to the point of giving AI human tendencies, when we talk about AI, basically we are talking about a process of developing a system that gets things done efficiently, faster, and with less human friction that is required in that. But when the aspect of AGI comes in, the artificial general intelligence, the scope of how an AI system will be perceived really changes, really, gets broadened. The entity gets broadened. Like, how do you perceive that AGI? So before we dig deeper into what is an AGI, how is an AGI different from a generative AI that we use these days?
Okay, great question. Although I'll give a simple disclaimer before answering this question that I don't think that AGI exists, but we can assume anything to be AGI depending on the nature of the technology and the nature of discourse. Because there is no threshold for technology. Right now, we are saying super alignment by OpenAI is the future. Nowadays, we know that Claude 3 Opus is doing much better than OpenAI's GPT-4 Turbo, not even GPT-4, but GPT-4 Turbo. Then we know that Devin has come up. Then there's an Indian alternative called Devika by a very talented Malayali student of BTech or computer science. So I think a lot of use cases of AI coming through. But the difference between Gen AI and AGI is this: in Gen AI, you actually have capabilities to generate something new. When you have generative capabilities as an AI system, be a product, a system infrastructure, or a service, like a SaaS product, like a subscription based model, then you are able to generate some outputs which are very new. Now that can happen in the context of music. You have Beethoven.ai, you have Suno.ai, you have so many tools like this. In the graphics space, Canva is already leveraging third-party tools. And then there are other tools as well. Adobe Firefly is there. Then in the text side, it's already a lost game. I don't know why the New York Times has filed a suit against OpenAI. It's a suit which has no future. But anyways, congratulations to the American justice system. Let's see how they go through. But yeah, that's also the thing there, because an AGI, what we know, is basically a mythical concept or a fictional concept where we say that an AI has a lot of capabilities beyond the theory of mind, which is to say that an AI is able to do a lot of tasks even beyond human competence and limitations. But then my question is, what is that limitation? And I think a simple answer to that question was answered by the head of public policy, not head of public policy, but the head of AI at Meta, by the name of Jan LeCun, who actually says that while Sam Altman, Elon Musk, and everyone hypes about AI and AGI, that AGI is coming by 2030, Elon Musk gets wild on X and says all the time that AGI is happening by 2029. I don't believe him. But then, congratulations to his optimism, or I don't know, hype. But he says that an AI system right now, even with billions of parameters and so much energy that is wasted on AI, I mean, it's fine to have AI, there's no problem. But a lot of energy is invested in the GPUs, and despite that processing capacity, an AI right now can't even do better than a mere one brain celled cat. And that is a very interesting example, which Mr. Jan LeCun actually tries to point out. You can actually read about it later. I'll not get into the nitty gritty of it. So, what I'm trying to say is that when it comes to AI and generative AI, the best part of Gen AI is it can produce something which is in line with your own perception. And it can happen in any segment. It does not mean that it is evolutionary. It may be a case that it might be helpful in your daily tasks. It might make your work easier. And that is true. There is evidence for it. There are papers published in Archive. You can actually go through. There's a paper on GPT-4 which proved it. So I agree on the specific aspect. But beyond 6 to 12 months, will these use cases survive? How much money is being pumped? Is it kind of disenfranchising anyone who's an entrepreneur in the global south? Because the problem is the cost of GPU is increasing because of the big tech companies, and India has to alarmingly address this issue. Sadly, METI hasn't done that. I hope the MEA does it. They are more proactive than the METI, honestly. So I don't know, but honestly, I think these are important things. And compute infrastructure is definitely an issue, but then we have to see, should we fight for certain autonomous rights on having better compute infrastructure so that we are not affected by the monopoly of certain entities like Nvidia and others. So
Hmm.
that's also a geopolitical and legal aspect which India needs to address in future. So yeah.
So, I was reading your paper where you mentioned about anthropomorphizing of AI. And the only thing that came to my mind while reading this paper was the movie Her. Have you seen that movie? So, for our viewers who have not seen that movie, the basic premise of that movie is that Joaquin Phoenix's character, who is the protagonist in this movie, falls in love with a Siri-like AI, like a voice assistant, but AI generated voice assistant. And the voice was played by Scarlett Johansson, who was an AI or which is an AI. Like that's what the anthropomorphizing of AI is all about. And within the premise of the movie, the characters around Joaquin Phoenix really gets frustrated about why is it treating this a machine like a person. So, do you think that there might be some future litigation where people will talk about giving human rights to AI?
Okay, so thanks. I'm actually interested to know that you read my paper on anthropomorphization. So yeah, I actually had written on it. I think during COVID, long time back. So to be very fair, I think giving some sort of civil rights to AI in the context of public law or constitutional law, as we say, and administrative law, is a far fetched proposition because right now we as human beings have autonomy. I'll give you a simple example. There was a guy by the name of Stephen Thaler. He filed patent applications for making an AI an inventor across the world. I'm not sure of India. He filed across the world. Except South Africa, a BRICS country, all the Western countries, key ASEAN countries like Singapore, Japan, and European Union disagreed with their proposition, which is to say the application, and the patent application was rejected. And I'll tell you why it was rejected. The idea was that if you give, so what happens in a patent is, for example, if you have created something which is novel and you have filed a patent application, you are a human being representing yourself or a company or
Okay.
any NGO or entity, whatever, maybe even government, right? Now, if you do that, you file a patent application, you know your rights, you have that sense of cognitive empathy and autonomy to make actions, right? You know your legal rights, and there is an understanding or human understanding of things. We know that two humans are interacting, one human who's a bureaucrat from the patent office and another human who's actually somebody who's applied for a patent. So all laws are made for humans, but when you involve and say that an AI should be an inventor and the owner of the AI should be patentee to invoke the legal rights, then a legal lacuna is created, which could be even geopolitically relevant. And this, I mean, I had this idea already in 2020. I'm not bragging about it. I had discussed with a few friends, and they thought it might be a conspiracy theory, but it's not, as we see. So what happens is that when you make an AI an inventor, technically, I don't think an AI system will have the autonomy to think like a human or decide on anything when it comes to their own legal rights, right?
Okay.
If you are saying an AI in India has filed an affidavit, then if an affidavit statement is false, the High Court of Bombay or High Court of Delhi will not take action against the AI. The High Court of Delhi will take action against
You
the
will
owner.
know. Of course.
Because they will say, you know what, this is forgery, you have mentioned something wrong in the affidavit, it doesn't make sense. So even in the case of patent application, what will happen is it will only favor the big companies. They will say, Meta will say, or OpenAI will say, you know what, as per our knowledge assets and knowledge management practices, we have been doing this blah 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 for some 5 to 7 years. I'm sorry, we can't show this information publicly, but there is some instance that we can show. Therefore, since this XYZ is related, therefore this can't be patented. This is our objection. And the
Hmm.
problem is if a startup or a person who has somehow managed to create an AI tool tries to prove that their process can be patented, will not be able to do so because a big tech company has these objections. This is similar to the patent wars that Apple has already been having. So accepting AI as an inventor even is not good for business. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to AI should mean growth, AI should mean dhanda in Indian lingo, and it should mean business. And if it's not business, then it's nothing. Your R&D will not happen, your innovation will not happen, you can't make new jobs for people, you can't have any technological revolution, therefore no technological sovereignty, nothing. So nothing could be achieved if you don't have a viable AI ecosystem where people are actually able to earn, which is why this was wrong. But even logically, obviously, it doesn't make sense that, the first argument which I made, that, you can't give autonomy to something which can't even understand. Because as I told you in the beginning, a Gen AI system, it gives you a response which is appealing. It might be able to process it well, but when will you ask it why did it do that, it will not be able to tell why. It can't understand
Not
things. It can't.
conscious about its own self. That's what you are saying.
There is no concept of consciousness here, because an AI system just processes. It learns, but it doesn't understand why did it learn.
Hmm. So
So
there
from
are
a
some.
neurological perspective, if
Please continue.
yeah, yeah.
You can. Sorry. I.
So just to add, and I'll be short then, since the fact that an AI system can't understand, the problem is it will never be able to explain. The best a
Hmm.
developer can do is figure out, okay, fine, these are the specific parameters, these are the limitations, that's how it is processed in the real-time scenario, that's all. But can an AI explain its actions? No. So if an AI can't explain its actions, why should we give them any rights? Right? Because even the concept of natural justice is like, right to be heard. Why do you give a right to be heard? Because you know that the human will actually speak about it, even if a judge agrees or not, that's a different matter. But in a system, you have to be heard, right? If you file a bail application, you have to tell why a bail application is necessary under IPC, CRPC. I mean, we have the new Sanhitas, which is the Nyaya Samhita and all those. So under them also you'll do the same, right? So that's how the commonsensical approach is. And I think due to the hype, a lot of innovation which is tried to be done, it's not happening. And that is somehow a sad thing. And I hope that that's addressed properly. But yeah, that obviously is a different trajectory altogether.
It
I'm
is
sorry
all
for
about.
digressing.
It is all about commercializing a product and making money out of it. And like when we talk about its use cases, it varies from the cases to case, right?
Yeah.
So, like I gave an example about Terminator, about which is symbolic of the weaponization of AI that we have watched growing up in the sci-fi movies. And today, this image is getting very real as we see that the concern of use of AI in weapon system is increasing day by day. Like even UNSC recently deliberated about using the doctrine, let's just say the doctrine of keeping the man in the loop within the weapon system and not giving AI the full power to make the decisions, the critical decisions of launching something like maybe a nuclear bomb, a nuclear payload. So maybe to avoid these catastrophic miscalculations, let's just say euphemistically, of very intelligent weapons who might not have understanding of what is right and wrong, how is the international convention dealing with this? Like, are there any existing laws that are talking about this human in the loop doctrine?
So the Geneva Conventions don't deal with this. They're archaic. They were based in the Second World War environment. Okay, there are some negotiations which keep happening in the United Nations Security Council and all those bodies. And people who have researched in this, done PhDs in international humanitarian law, are kind of bored with this. They say the same negotiations are like the negotiations on NPT.
Of
I
course.
mean, India had to, for example, I'll give you a simple instance. So, for a non-proliferation treaty, when it comes to nuclear weapons, we had to do Pokhran. We had to do, the Buddha project, and we had no choice, right? Now, when it comes to capabilities, I'll get you on that. So, leave aside the question of regulations. For example, if Iran gets a little crazy and tries to, not intercept but use a ballistic missile in which it's targeting a set of Israeli troops, which are in somewhere, and they are situated in a friendly territory, say in West Asia. But turns out they have targeted Turkey or Turkish
Oh,
revolutionaries. What will happen? And the error could be like, okay, fine, it was an AI system, there was some computational error, and
hmm.
there were no roadblocks or guardrails that a soldier or a particular army person at that level could control the system so that the risk could be averted.
Hmm.
Now, with nuclear weapons, again, the use of AI in nuclear weapons is a very contentious question. There are some commonsensical answers like, yeah, we should prevent it. We should ensure that human autonomy exists. But then we should ask these questions from an R&D perspective. as to what aspects of use cases are there when it comes to AI plus nuclear warfare, or AI and aerial warfare, or any form of warfare. And I think uh, there is a lot of jurisprudence among armies of the world when it comes to their war journals and discussions and workshops and things, and even in defense tech, that we know that there's a sense of concern. Again, AI can definitely be used in wargaming. You have to see what kind of weapons and capabilities do you have, and how do you defend yourself, or have an offensive sense towards any technology. Now, at that level, obviously, some negotiations happen, but as we have seen in the history of Cold War, the way international law has transformed has become even slow. And the simple example is, you just look at space law. Despite the Ukraine war, the Russians and the US are still collaborating on space-related issues. Is the Roscosmos, if I'm right, is not warring with NASA. They know what they have to do. Now the Chinese are a bit naughty. That's a different issue because the Chinese don't have that legacy relationship with the Americans, right? And we know that Trump exited the START treaty. That's a different issue altogether. But the relationship, despite the Ukraine situation, because the Russians were cancelled everywhere, the whole delinking with Russians were happening because the Russian-US relationship, the Soviet-US relationship on the Cold War, was not just about enmity and everything. It was also about strategic partnerships, right?
Right.
We all knew that spies and people in the government of both sides were collaborating in different ways. We have some funny movies on that. Again, I'm not getting on movies, but I'm getting on facts. So in space law, what used to happen when these 5 treaties came in, the Outer Space Treaty, the Moon Agreement, the Soviets and the Americans agreed on most things. It was easy to do, right? Now in the post Clinton era, post Bush era, post 9/11 Obama Trump era, it's just impossible. Prime Minister Modi won't agree for a treaty. Xi Jinping won't agree for a treaty. The Singapore Prime Minister won't agree for a treaty simply because it doesn't make sense. It is against their sovereign interest. And the thing is, instead of a treaty, even in AI, a best approach was that UNESCO came up with a recommendation on ethics of AI.
Okay.
But the Americans were so impatient, they came up with a UNGA resolution on some mediocre points that, you know what, we should collaborate on AI, we should talk about AI. I mean, you already have the 2021 recommendation. What new are you offering?
What
So,
were this recommendation of UNESCO?
So, in the recommendation, some principal aspects of AI are recognized in terms of how it affects human rights, which makes sense. There were some aspects of cultural aspects like anthropomorphization. Anthropomorphization simply means that, you know, an AI system kind of imitates, again without understanding, human attributes in the most wildest way possible, which have to be understood as a matter of legal recognition.
Of course.
So, on that context, this was a beautiful recommendation. The Indian submissions, diplomatic submissions, were also great. They are available on the internet. People can read them. So, I think the UNESCO recommendation did its job. So, I don't find any necessity for a UNGA resolution. I don't know why everyone is hyping about it. In fact, the funniest part is the GA resolution, which was passed unanimously, and India was not a party to it.
Oh,
Yeah, it was not. It actually cited a UN business ethics principles document, which was already there in the 2010s.
okay.
So nothing new to offer. You could have referred to the International Law Commission. You never referred anything on customary international law because you can't do that. You haven't accepted anything. Everything is non-binding. So international law is public international is a mix, right? I mean, it doesn't get implemented.
Hmm.
VCLT, same thing. So that's why I think on conventions, that's the thing. But I wanted to give you a picture on what has been the thing, which is why European Union has their own legislation. China has 4 laws on generative AI. India has been hasty. The least said, the better. Sadly, the Americans came up with the Biden administration's voluntary commitments, which is great. They made sense commonsensically. The Japanese came up with something on AI and culture, which is about copyright issues, a minor thing, which is fine. So that's how these developments happen.
Of course. So we talked a lot about AI and how it impacts the environment we live in. Now let's talk about the market that makes AI happen, the semiconductor market, which is my personal interest, to be honest. So a lot of interest is getting generated in developing semiconductor-based hardware in indigenous market. like localizing that supply chain, bringing the supply chain back to home. What Americans are trying hard through by decoupling and de-risking from the Chinese ecosystem, from Chinese semiconductor ecosystem. Like TSMC is investing in left, right, and center in United States, and so is Intel, and so is everyone trying to bring the fabrication in their homeland. Because maybe they are paranoid about if someone else gets access to this, they might use it against themselves in case of a total war scenario. And do you think that same kind of thing is also happening in the AI ecosystem as well? And what is an AI ecosystem? Like I get the semiconductor ecosystem, it has the designing, manufacturing, assembly. How does an AI ecosystem looks like?
Okay, great question. An AI ecosystem is definitely based on some very basic features. For example, there is the compute infrastructure market where you have Nvidia and all those players. They're relying on GPUs from China, Taiwan, and the US and others, and especially the Japanese as well and others. So that's obviously the semiconductor part is there. There are specific kinds of semiconductors that you need for generative AI systems, right? And it depends. A simple example that I would give is that uh, when it comes to the global semiconductor value chain, you need hardware accelerators such as GPUs, ASICs, and FPGAs, which are for different aspects of AI workloads, right? Because these chips are designed to handle the computations, which are complicated. And then again, uh, we are trying to build general purpose AI systems. You need them. Now, beyond computation, which is say compute infrastructure and semiconductors, of course, you have an R&D ecosystem where you have researchers and developers and data scientists who are developing these AI systems. Then you have investors and VCs who are concerned about investing in products and scaling them. So yeah, data server, data centers, all those things matter. Beyond that, obviously, you have customers and clients and governments who are reliant on these systems. And governments, I think, is a different issue. But then again, definitely, we are talking about customers and clients who are reliant on an ecosystem. So that is the AI ecosystem largely. In every sector, it would differ because for supply management, supply chain management, it's a different issue. For factory workers, it's a different issue. For FMCG, fashion, it will be completely different. For entertainment industry, it is something else. For people in the OTT side, Netflix and all those, it's completely different. For the pharma people, it's different. In the legal tech side, which is again very hyped in India, it's not developing that well. I'll be very honest. Very few examples are coming up in India, but not that strong yet. Maybe except Nishad Desai, nobody's doing it that well. When again, that depends. So legal tech is there, right? So I think even in agriculture, you can help farmers in detecting crop health. Now you can already do it through geospatial technology, which is through satellites and all. But even beyond, your drones can be helpful. You already have the drone market, which is again it's a market which needs more innovation. But the drone laws have not been helpful the 2018 months. So this is my summarization of what an AI ecosystem seems to be. And obviously there's a supplier retailer conception which is applied depending on the server capacity, the computational capacity, what kind of tokens you have. And I think these things kind of make the whole picture.
So, like we talked about the commercialization aspect of AI as well as the semiconductors that goes together because semiconductors enable AI, the hardware enables the software basically. So, if you see the global value chain of semiconductor design and manufacturing, it is very oligopolistic in nature. Like there are only 5 to 6 major players who are calling the shots who will get their products and will not get their products. So, like the AI market is also driven by them, the semiconductor companies itself. Like Nvidia goes on developing the semiconductor chips for AI acceleration. It was in the market of graphical processing unit that were used in the gaming systems. Then it got into the data center market. Now it wants to lead the AI market using the GPU of Nvidia. So, like you see, the product cycles are getting developed and the market is getting open for them. But do you think that such an oligopolistic tendencies are already getting developed in the AI commercialization as well, or is there something more to that?
It already is there. The compute infrastructure market itself proves it. Then there's a sense of confusion among investors. Then again, that's a different issue. But then again, the problem is what can you ensure when it comes to investing? For example, when it comes to compute infrastructure, there will be monopoly or oligopoly of certain players. You can't do anything about it. They're just too costly.
Of
The
course.
cost of having that is huge. So that is already kind of gone. But then again, the government has to intervene somewhere to make sure that this compute infrastructure is accessible and people are at least able to afford it.
Hmm.
Because if you can't do it, you can't have MSMEs and startups which are leveraging AI. It will be just an issue of, you have to join somewhere, then work under, you don't have the autonomy. And I think that is an important concern right now,
Of course.
which is why AI is in the nascent stage. A lot talk happens, a lot of summits happen, but in
I'll
reality,
contextualize a little bit of this question. So, Sam Altman recently said that he also want to get into the business of the manufacturing the chips. So, if you imagine OpenAI getting into the business of manufacturing the chips, it designs its own chips. It does outsource some of it to Nvidia, but it also is in the business of the chip designing already. It's a fabless company as well as an R&D lab. So if it also gets in the manufacturing market of AI, of chips, and they are asking a lot of funding from foreign national from the West Asia, which is equivalent to GDP of most of the countries in the world. So do you think that the existing semiconductor companies will allow this, or maybe there's some understanding amongst themselves that let's just divide the pie amongst ourselves rather than fighting over it, and let's make OpenAI a partner in this?
well, I'm not someone who is, much into the semiconductor economics, but I'll tell you this that uh, at a basic level, yes, it depends if OpenAI can leverage their capabilities and whether Microsoft can profit from it. Because Nvidia specializes in chips and they have been doing it for a long time. And now they are entering into AI systems by coming up with privately offline AI systems. For example, you don't need, real time internet for certain kind of AI systems. You just need to give some limited capabilities to a digital, I would say, AI bot, and you can do it. So Nvidia has tried that, and uh, Nvidia does it at a B2B level.
Okay.
OpenAI is also doing at a B2B level, which, hyping up about Sora to Hollywood producers saying that it will replace Zack Snyder and I don't know, Steven Spielberg and Guy Ritchie and Prashant Neel and Mani
Ah,
Ratnam and yeah. So I'm not gonna accept that Sora is gonna do that. It's overhyped. But fine, it's a good tool. It might ease some burden. It might ease some work because filmmaking is hard. So I think in B2B side, it remains to be seen how OpenAI leverages. I'm more hopeful for Microsoft than OpenAI because both of them are different. Yeah, because the way Microsoft does acquisitions, it's very innovative. The way Perplexity does, it's very innovative. The way Google is reacting is different. The way Meta does is different. OpenAI, despite being acquired by Microsoft, is a very different beast altogether.
how?
So
I thought it was a part of the Microsoft in the
it
OpenAI.
is a part. It is a part, but the way OpenAI makes decisions, it doesn't reflect completely that it's all about Microsoft, right? You have a sense of autonomy. For example, Google and YouTube, they are a part of Alphabet, but it depends how Google is acting and how YouTube is acting, right? There are some stark differences. YouTube is much resilient, while Google, when it comes to its products, they're not coming up with anything innovative. Gmail and Google Meet and a few products they are working. Rest of them are failing. They just cancelled their Jamboard. They gave up Google Plus. They gave up a lot of products. So Google Workspace again depends if it works well, but I think Microsoft is very good at standalone approaches. So again, it depends on company segments. We can't have a one size fits all picture on one monopolistic company. We're saying, what,
Hmm.
OpenAI is Microsoft, therefore Microsoft is not doing well. Well, that's a very far fetched answer. I don't think it answers the question. Mistral is different, OpenAI is different, Microsoft is different. We have to take companies into
So
regard.
corporate
OpenAI,
strategizations,
yeah, please, sorry.
corporate strategizations are different from entity to entity. They cannot be put in the same blanket.
Exactly. It depends on how their business strategies are, how their technical strategies are, who's doing much better. And again, right now, OpenAI is the bigger player when it comes to Microsoft's acquisitions. But will OpenAI will be everything? We don't know. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. I don't know. It might survive, right? I might be wrong. So I'm not going to say that it will or not. I'm not a psephologist. I'm not a predictor. But I
Of
am
course.
going to be honest that that's how we should look at companies, right? Google also can make mistakes and rebound, right? We never know. But right now, as it seems, OpenAI has certain issues to tackle. Anthropic is doing pretty well, which is interesting to see. So, yeah.
Hmm. So I read about AI as a service market. So basically, if I'm a mid to large size company having a lots of data, I can rent a part of the data center run by Nvidia, and the Nvidia center will provide me AI as a service. So maybe I won't say an AGI itself, but an AI that is personalized for my own business and for my own data that I can use for making decisions within this. So how is this market going to emerge, and who is leading this?
Well, this market, when it comes to B2B, Microsoft using Copilot is trying to leverage some capabilities. Zoho in India, under the great Sridhar Vembu, it's already doing its ways in the US and now in India as well. There are other companies who are also trying. Okay, so again, what Microsoft does directly, does it help OpenAI? Of course there are some leverages, but then it depends. So from a B2B point of view, if you're saying, of course you can leverage AI systems for easing your work, automating certain things and making things much more viable, and that's definitely a thing which can be noticed in the positive ways possible. So that's obviously there. So
Hmm.
yeah, if that's your question, yeah, that's my response.
Right. So let's come back to AI now. AI as a whole. We talked a lot about semiconductors, and I can go all day about it. But yeah, we saw the Bletchley Convention recently conducted in Britain, where politicians, business leaders, and academicians they all talked about like creating appropriate standards, safeguards in the machine learning process of AI. So how does this work? Like, how do you create such safeguards within the machine learning processes of AI, and how do you enforce it by law?
Okay. Okay, great question. So when you look at the Bletchley Declaration, uh, the one thing which is understandable is that it was all about AI safety. And what we also understand from a basic point of view is that the Bletchley Declaration was very sensitive about uh, leveraging the capabilities of AI, because the concern was that AI systems might not be safe enough, and therefore it needs to be addressed that way. Now, to be very fair on that, I'm not denying it, but the Bletchley Declaration is not something which is a very, I would say, perfect document, because all it does is it provides certain, I would say, it addresses some fears, or let us say, created fears. Which, so, to that extent, obviously, for example, the basic recognition of general purpose AI models. Yeah, that makes sense. And the good part with the declaration was that it was focusing on two domains, cybersecurity and biotechnology. And the idea was that Rishi Sunak thought that, foundational models must be understood from a safety point of view, which is great, which is fine, right? And specific narrow applications of AI must be understood. So that made sense. Uh, then, of course, there are some things, for example, you know, now the reference was to a class of technology which the declaration calls as the frontier AI technology. Now, what is it basically? It simply means that uh, in the whole AI development process, sometimes there are cutting edge AI technologies which have exceptional power and potential, and there could be a sense of unintended harm. So it means that you know um, you may not have a bad intention, but the AI system might be working in a way which could damage or cause any harm. And to an extent, on aspects of market hype, OpenAI's GPT-4 and Claude 3 might be in that category, but I still don't think that's the case right now. I don't find any evidentiary aspect. Yeah, the one aspect with generative AI which is harmful is hacking, and I'm glad that on cybersecurity this declaration kind of makes sense.
Of course.
On biotechnology, again, when it comes to genome sequencing, those things, and the protection of genetic data, yeah, I understand why this declaration becomes important. So if you look at the specific application, the Bletchley Declaration is not reactive, but overall, obviously, it's not something like a done and dusted case. I think that is how we should look at this declaration. Although not a bad attempt, it's a great attempt. Because I must commend the British. The US has always been reactive on AI, but under this administration, they have had some common sense. Rishi Sunak's government, I hope things go well with them in the coming months. They have been very proactive with their approach on AI. They have a pro innovation approach, which kind of makes sense to me. Uh, uh, so, yeah, as opposed to the European approach, which is very highly reactive and
True.
very sophisticated in a way which might not be helpful for everyone. But let's see.
But
The Bletchley Declaration helps. So, yeah.
But why are governments so much interested in taming the AI ecosystem within around the world through such multilateral partnerships and such conventions and meetups? Let's just say so. Like even our government has developed this India AI ecosystem, and we have declared a capital outlay of rupees 10,000 crores of tax money for developing an AI ecosystem in India. So around the world, what is the end goal of the governments, and why are they so much interested in AI as a whole?
So there's the genuine interest makes sense. For example, the AI mission in which the amount you said has been subject to it will be invested by the government of India. I think the AI mission is fabulous. There's no question about it. Uh, the AI advisory was a failure. That's a different question altogether. So two different ministries, two different approaches. Ironically, they had one more ministry, which is Ministry of Corporate Affairs. They came up with a digital competition bill, which is fabulously written.
Okay.
And yeah, so they have a digital competition law bill, which was drafted thanks to a lot of support from certain law firms and certain people in Delhi and across the country. And they contributed their insights. Even a lot of companies like Zomato, X, Bumble, and others, AZB and partners, a lot of them contributed to the consultations. And the final draft, or let's say the first draft of the bill, which even we have read, it's a beautifully written draft on competition law. So I'm like awestruck that on regulation, on economic aspects like competition law, this government makes sense. But Métis fails. We have a very terribly written AI advisory, one of the most terribly written ever. And then at the same time, the Commerce Ministry is very clear that they have to invest this much money. They are clear about their goals. And even their India AI report, since you're referring to the India AI initiative, which is a good initiative by the government and NASCOM, they actually came up with a report. And it's a good report. By all means, it's a good report. It suggests certain practical things about centers of excellence and others, and it kind of makes sense too. And I think, from a practical point of view, I think uh, I think it depends. So the reason why governments are a bit anxious is definitely that they should invest some R&D in the R&D side, innovation. That is one reason. Second is definitely leveraging some economics so that we know what to regulate.
Hmm.
And therefore, and obviously, there are certain risks in the cybersecurity domain and the information warfare side, misinformation basically, which is why this AI advisory came in such a haste.
Of course.
And that's why, yeah. On March 1st in the midnight, there was no public copy. There was some friend or colleague who told me. I read it, okay, and then we responded. But it was such a terribly written AI advisory. And so, I mean, the least said on tech regulation in India, the better. But on economics, I completely support. I think they have done a great job. So I think obviously investing in R&D is a good way forward, because AI is at a nascent stage right now, even with a lot of capabilities and a lot of GPUs being used by big companies.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's the thing.
So, we promised you 1 hour, and we'll do this. We'll complete this in 1 hour. So, moving to the end of this interview, your career trajectory is very interesting to me. Like your formal education is in law, and your core profession is in the policy consultancy in the domain of disruptive technologies. And this is like having the best of the both the worlds, and also being at the right place at the right time, like you are right now. Since the developments in AI are getting interesting as well as relevant. Like not many people may be thinking about it, but it is affecting everyone because it is relevant. So, at what point in your career you thought that AI can be the will be the next used thing, and you should focus on this?
Great question. The answer is philosophical.
Okay.
I have been a fan of general relativity and, Lorentz transformation. I've been a fan of theoretical physics.
Okay.
Not exactly Oppenheimer, but yeah, we can say I've been a fan of concepts of theoretical physics and Swami Vivekananda's concepts. So
Mm.
Sri Aurobindo, Swami Vivekananda, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, uh, these people and their concepts also inspired me about aspects of human autonomy,
Mm.
fatalism a bit, and the concept of karma that was partially responsible. I was also inspired by Bertrand Russell's philosophy, although he was kind of an atheist, as we know.
Mm.
Uh, I was also, I mean, there are multiple inspirations as we go through. Part inspiration also goes to Dr. Jaishankar, the foreign minister
Okay.
himself, for his Indo-Pacific approach, but that was more in the geopolitical side of things. But he was
I
not
want
in.
to know what do you think about Indo-Pacific. I'll ask you that as well.
So, Indo-Pacific under Shinzo Abe was an evolutionary concept.
Mm.
And when he talked about it in the Parliament of India, it was more about cooperating among the Quad member countries on tsunami and some sort of positive cooperation. When
Mm.
Mike Pompeo took the charge with Donald Trump, it was more about some countering China. Obviously, we know the Quad is there to counter China. May the
Mm.
minister say anything, but we know that China is a focus. But the larger purpose of the Quad, as Dhruva Jaishankar, the head of ORF America, says, is that the Quad is not merely about China only. It's also about like an entité,
Mm.
like kind of an alliance of sorts, which is not like a multilateral arrangement, which is going to shape the future of the world.
Okay.
In that case, the Indo-Pacific Quad, as we know, and the members of the Indo-Pacific Quad are going to be the most important in that. The second most important may be the West Asian Quad, which is the Indo-Abrahamic, propounded by my friend Mohammed Soliman, who's a
Acha.
West Asia expert. Yeah, very interesting person. I really appreciate his works. So that's why Indo-Pacific has been an inspiration. But for technology, I would say Albert Einstein, Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, Srinivasa Ramanujan, and Sri Aurobindo. These people have inspired me so much that I wanted to explore aspects of autonomy. And while my larger specialization has been in international law, I kind of fell in love with digital tech. So, be it any digital technology, the features of the technology always interest me. So, that's the larger reason.
That's a great thing. So, what I ask this question to all our guests, and everyone really gives a good answer to this. So, not putting you in the pressure of answering the best that we can, but what advice will you give to the young audience who are also trying to build a career like you are in and carving your own niche within the disruptive technology sector?
Okay, so the answer is that if you are in the academic side, you need to know the technology. Although you should know the technology, be it in anything, be it think tanks or academia or government or privately. But beyond knowing technology, the strategic purpose of technology has to be deeply understood, because most people problem is in technology policy ecosystem in India. A lot of people don't read primary sources. They just think it's all about lobbying some bureaucrat in a government ministry, but it's not lobbying. It's also about developing market practices, helping people, making things viable. And with commercialization, the concepts of human rights and civil rights also come in through. There's no deniability of privacy, but how do
Right.
you create a privacy compliant ecosystem when, in the name of compliance, you can't even ensure that, So, for example, if you want a privacy compliant ecosystem, you need to ensure that people have the capability
Hmm.
to invest in something and be capable. But if you
Right.
don't have that capability, you can't create a compliant ecosystem, you don't understand how these ethical questions can be answered, then you might not be that much good in tech policy. And the thing is that tech policy can't be as fast as evolution of any technology. But a lot of people who hype on social media, AI influencers and others, they try to show that, what, every single week some AI act stuff is coming, some regulation is coming, some blah 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 is coming. They don't realize that it's fine. 100 documents will come every month, but it's more about what's the strategic purpose. Are they just to camouflage people, to create a strategic confusion? for lobbying, because if you're just obsessed with lobbying, then there's no democratic representation anywhere, and no startup or MSME can earn well in India then when it comes to AI. So
Right.
I think when it comes to any technology, like in space, it's a closed-ended industry, right?
Mm,
ISRO needs to liberalize more in terms of its launch pads and many other things, right?
mm,
ISRO can't monopolize the space sector. It has to cooperate with Garuda and others, right? Uh, Semiconductors, again, the government is trying their best. They themselves admit that for 30 years we have wasted our time and we are way far behind than the Chinese. But then
right.
it depends on how they do everywhere, how they do in West UP. The Yogi government has said something that they'll do it in Noida. Let's see what they do. I wish them all the best, right? The Assam government has done well. They've already started. The Gujarat is definitely going to do well. I'm not even questioning Gujarat. Gujarat has all the might and understanding on these things. They're very witty and they're very smart. So Gujarat is a different state. Maharashtra and Gujarat are going to do well. Tamil Nadu is going to do well. Fortunately, Karnataka also. So it depends on context, and I think in tech policy, that's what one has to do.
Mm,
That's because that relates to Dr. Jaishankar's famous statement that every technology is political. He said that in the Global Technology Summit in 2020 or 2021, and he said that, and people were like, "Okay, how is it political?" Well, it is. Obviously, concepts like reinforcement learning are not political. They're not communist or liberal or Hamiltonian or you know
mm,
Gandhiwadi or something like that. They are concepts which are basic. That's in science and technology. But beyond that, if somebody in Seattle is dominating on a class of some technology and uses it to pursue their liberal agenda or neoliberal agenda, or somebody who is a, I don't know, Confucian Xi Jinping supporter in Hong Kong, who's using to promote their agenda, not just in information warfare, but even in basic aspects of supply and other things,
mm,
then of course it's a matter of concern for us. That actually shows how sovereignty works, and that actually shows how governments need to respond on things.
right.
And that's why I think these things need to be taken care of. People should stop hyping and start helping. I think that's how tech policy can become better. And yeah, it's a good field. Most people don't know what tech policy is. They
Yes.
will write articles on AI and copyright every single time, but it's the same stuff they talk about. No practical understanding of media sciences or journalism. So that's my advice. I hope that helped out. So I'm sorry for digressing.
Of course, of course. So with this, we are at the end of this interview. Thank you very much for doing this. We hope to host you again on the same topic or maybe in a different topic altogether related to tech and AI. And I wish you all the best, sir.
It's a pleasure to connect. Thank you so much.